me to the gym each morning, and we bonded slightly. We don't really like each other, but for Brian's sake we did our best to get along. Why, after 50 years of contented bachelorhood, he had decided to marry a widow with 2 grown-up daughters, I don't know. To be fair, Marcia is probably an ideal wife for a diplomat. She's fluent in 3 languages, can organise a formal dinner party at the drop of a hat, and apparently plays a fiendish hand of bridge. At first I felt energised by the buzz of London, the rush, but the excitement quickly wore off. I found myself longing for muddy lanes and birdsong. At the end of 10 days, when every day had been crammed with shopping and sightseeing, each evening spent at an expensive restaurant or a West End show, I was more than ready to come home. As my train headed back into Devon, I found myself letting out a breath. From Exeter, the railway line hugs the South Devon coast, passing red cliffs on one side and the open sea on the other. The train stops at Dawlish, where on wild nights sea spray washes over the carriages. During a storm a few years back, the rocks beneath the line were swept away, leaving the track swinging like a rope bridge a few feet above the churning waves. The track turns inland after Teignmouth, running alongside the lazy grey waters of the Tean estuary to Newton Abbot, which is where I got off. Despite my determination not to shop, I'd come back from London with far more bags and baggage than I'd left with. I'd received several offers from people happy to pick me up from the station, but decided I'd rather sneak back into Ashburton with the minimum of fuss. On the other hand, I didn't fancy the bus ride with all my baggage, so I compromised and took a taxi. My last little luxury, I warned myself, before I got home. The previous occupant had left a copy of the Dartmoor Gazette on the back seat, and I gave it a quick flick through to see if anything interesting had been happening whilst I'd been away. Not much. Someone living in the village of Scorriton had lost her Labradoodle, convinced it had been stolen, and police were searching for 3 men who'd been spotted climbing out of the back of a lorry just disembarked from the ferry at Plymouth. Then, buried at the foot of an inside page, I found something fascinating. District Councillor and property developer Alistair Dunstan was granted a restraining order against a member of this newspaper's staff at a court hearing in Exeter today. The injunction bars our reporter, Sandy Thomas, from being within 100 yards of Mr. Dunstan's home. Mr. Dunstan was quoted as saying that Ms. Thomas had exceeded the considerable liberties afforded to members of her profession, stalking him and harassing members of his family. Ms. Thomas was also accused of causing an affray at a fundraising dinner attended by Mr. Dunstan, and was bound over to keep the peace. What had Sandy been up to? She can be a pestilential nuisance, as I knew to my cost, forever pestering me with questions when I'd accidentally got myself involved in a murder investigation. It was she who saddled me with the title of Ashburton's amateur sleuth, a source of cringing embarrassment to me ever since. Merely the sound of her breathy Welsh voice on the phone was enough to wind me up. But she was just doing her job. She could be pushy, but I couldn't imagine her making so much of a nuisance of herself that someone had taken her to court. And what had Alistair Dunstan been up to that had aroused so much of her interest? I squinted at his photograph. He was quite good-looking. County councillor and property developer. That was a likely conflict of interest for a start. But causing an affray, what was that all about? I noticed that the newspaper hadn't offered any comment on her activities. Poor old Sandy. At least they hadn't given her the boot. By now the taxi had pulled up outside of my house, forcing me to abandon the newspaper. I had to get out and pay the driver, who retrieved my suitcase from the back, but drew the line at carting my baggage up the steps to the front door. I watched him turn his vehicle around at the end of the lane, then gathered up my chattels and began the ascent.